Well, you're raising the dead or shooting for the stars. Well, you can't go wrong with a Pottymouth guitar.
All right. Welcome back. You're here at Pottymouth Guitars, and you're looking at Earl Pottymouth Arbuckle. Howdy. All right. It's early in the morning. I'm actually, this is the first thing I'm doing today. I'm even wearing the same clothes that I was wearing last night when I did this pour. Because I wanted to just throw the clothes I had piled up next to the bed and get a look-see and see how this how the clear coat turned out. So let's go ahead and take off the box. I am so glad I figured out this little method, because I don't have a whole lot of space resources. So I don't have a place, a room where I can, spray polyurethane or, do things where I'm going to need to have a whole lot of control over the content of dust in the environment, stuff like that. These variables that can make a huge difference. And variables that we're going to be dealing with, it looks like. So, yeah, I'm taking a look at the surface here, and I'm seeing looks like there's a good bit of bubbles that we're going to be dealing with, but that's all right because I kind of expected that. And it looks like they're close to the surface, and we're going to be able to sand and buff those out. And that's why we pour this epoxy, and this is the reason why I'm doing epoxy, as a way to sort of try to mitigate, it's just I guess it seemed like a way to get around the fact that I don't have a dedicated facility. I just have this corner of my living room that I'm doing this in. And so I can isolate the guitar body by putting it in one of those storage bins you can buy at at your local department store or whatever. And largely we're looking pretty good. So all right, so let's we're seeing everything. So we've got our baby blocks, and I'm also interested to see, hopefully we didn't get any too terrible. I knew we had this issue here, and it looks like we've got a little bit of but we knew we were going to have to sand this anyway. So, yeah, and we got some through the darn, oh dear. Yeah, so we got a little bit of issue here. I tried to keep these 6 holes free because that's where the strings are going through the body, but one of those got clogged with epoxy, so we're gonna have to deal with that. But we have a drill, and and thanks to Chip Tate, my friend Chip Tate, who helped with the drilling the string holes through the body and the the holes here for the neck plate, and on the other side we're going to see the 4 holes we got drilled for the bridge. So we did that all over in his shop when we found out that Stacy Shea Williams was going to be buying this guitar. So I knew that I was going to have to modify it to her specifications. And so, all right, so what I did with this, just to sort of, like I said, I made these 6 cigar-shaped things with just masking tape and shoved them in the holes. And I did a pretty good job of making them right size, but I made one of them too small. And it looks like some epoxy seeped through this one, it looks like. I think that's the one. And 1, 2, yep, the third one over. So this guy, yeah, I can see the space there. Jeez, that stuff, I thought it was so thick, it could even seep through that. But anyway, I also wanted to make sure that I didn't block the holes drilled for the neck plate and neck. So I put just sheetrock screws in there just to plug the holes. And as it was drying, I went ahead, and you'll see, if you can see maybe, yes, with the camera there. Maybe you'll be able to see that there's some epoxy kind of like up on the screw and the threads. It's because I unscrewed these while the epoxy was still tacky, because I knew it was going to be a real challenge to get these screws out. And I figured I'll make a, this is all happening underneath the neck plate, so if there was a little weirdness in the epoxy or something like that, it's not going to be such a big deal. And besides, I'll be able to sand anything out and probably end up looking just like there was no issue at all. But at any rate, I wanted to be able to get these screws out easily. So we'll make sure that is the case, and yes, indeed. There it comes right out. Yep. Thank goodness for I don't know, ingenuity. My dad was always willing to experiment, and I think that's a valuable thing that he taught me by osmosis, by example, the best way to teach. And and you can see we got the baby blocks. So we got these silicone baby blocks that I ordered specifically to hold guitar bodies off of a surface so I could do a resin pour. So we've got our baby blocks. We'll throw them in there for now. Take the lid off. We'll go ahead and set that over here now. All right. And wow, we're back on the Pottymouth guitar building bench. All right, so we can take this tape off and take a little closer look at what we're going to be dealing with. So, as I was saying, with the clear coat, I don't have room and facilities for polyurethane spraying and doing that kind of like doing something where you have I'd have to have a lot more control over my environment, which is something that I have some control but not that much control. So I can use this corner of my living room without any problem, but I don't have the run of the whole house. I can't just close off a bedroom and start painting guitars in there. So, and another issue with the polyurethane is if I'm spraying in a body and doing, multiple sprays, you have to spray it, then you have to let it dry, and then sand in between the coats. So there's lots of coats and lots of time drying, and basically you've got a lot of toxic fumes just hanging in the air of a place. So you have to be able to isolate it and ventilate it so that you're not, I'm living in this space. So, figuring out a way to isolate the fumes into a box that seals off, and there we go. All right. And also, the controlled environment and being able to just sort of have a space where nothing else is happening. I can't hold that for weeks. It's better to put all the clear coat on at once on one shot, which is what you do with the epoxy. One coat, it self-levels, and then you do all the sanding and buffing at the end. No in-between coats. And, with a poly coat, if you want to do a super thick coat, and this is basically one of the goals here, I wanted to have a sort of magnifying coat, something that's going to really make the grain pop, and especially the pattern on the front of the guitar pop. I wanted to have a nice, thick, mirror, clear coat. So, epoxy is a way to do that without having to build coats of a very thin liquid. This stuff's very thick and will dry thick. So, and it dries thick enough that there is a lot of epoxy on top of this guitar. So I can sand that back, meaning I can sand all these little bubblets off of the surface. So these bubbles will have, part of it was accumulation of air in the liquid as I was stirring it. Also the chemical reaction between the hardener and the resin creates a little bit of bubbling. And then inevitably there's going to be some air trapped on the surface of the guitar, just in the little crannies and nooks and grain and whatever. I put some sealer coats on top of the wood, trying to mitigate that as much as possible, but inevitably there's going to be some that seeps through. So some of these bubbles are coming from the wood itself, some of them from the epoxy. But the goal is to make a coat thick enough that I can sand it back to where there's no bubbles, and then I can buff that and have a perfect mirror finish. This is going to be a flagship guitar, and hopefully Stacy's talking about maybe doing guitar lessons online. It would be an honor to have this guitar be featured in that. In those lessons. And we're going to make it the kind of guitar that Stacy's just going to want to pick up and play. I'm going to make it a lot easier for her to learn. And she already plays a little guitar, but as she said it, and I would quote her on this probably incorrectly, I'll paraphrase, but she claims that she is a guitar player, but not to guitar players. She is not a guitar player. She's only a guitar player to people who don't know how to play guitar. Something like that. But at any rate, she'll be getting better once she gets her hands on this machine. All right, so let's get these things out of here, hopefully. Might need to get some pliers. Yeah, let's do that. Might have to do some extreme measures on this mess. Oh, let's go ahead and use these baby pliers. These should be very useful. There we go. So. All right. So. Lovely. Okay, yeah, it looks good. We managed to keep this first one clear of any epoxy. I know there's one in here that I bungled it, but if I've got 5 that are clear and 1 bungled, then I've only got 1 that I have to drill out, and that'll be a blessing. But at least this little experiment, and I'm sure it's probably not the first time that anyone's ever done this. That one was super easy. But as far as I'm concerned, I invented this method. So to me, of course, I'm a genius. But it is a lot of fun to solve those kinds of problems, you know. And it does make you feel super smart for a second when you found a solution to something that was perplexing. And this is having had one of these end up leaking. Is 100 times better than previously, because when I poured the front of this, the top of this guitar, I had a bead of epoxy sitting next to each one of these holes. So the epoxy had snuck through the string through channels and had, so I had epoxy spots that basically discolored the stain on the back, and making me have to restain the back. So I had to sand the back all the way back to the wood. I reintroduced the silver grain filler, restained and that was because I did that. So, but we did have some seepage through the one channel, and it did accumulate on the front, so there's a bead of epoxy on the front. But the beauty of epoxy is that it's basically just a bump on the front, and we're going to be sanding the front back anyway, because we've got similar little microscopic bubbles on the surface of the front as well, on the top. And and then buffing, so it won't be marring the finish, basically. When there was no clear coat on the back here, basically the clear coat that came back and beat it on the surface here interrupted the finish. That's why I had to redo it, because there would have been a weird discolored spot next to each one of these string through ferrules, which would have been unattractive and strange looking. So this is the channel that got the epoxy in it, and I'm expecting that I'm going to be having some problems getting this plug out. But just be careful. Again, I'll be sanding and preparing this surface as well, but there's no need to put reckless effort in and have the plier slip and, put a big scrape across the surface. Because, especially if I'm putting weight into the tool or whatever, I can accidentally put a pretty deep gouge in a surface. So don't want to do that. Yeah, this is kind of a mess, but we'll get through it. We might have to dig the tape out bit by bit. There's a good portion of it coming out here, but I've got kind of a tail in between here, a little sort of a connective tissue between this blob inside and the stuff on the outside here. I'm actually going to get a screwdriver. See if I can find a very narrow. Yes. And again, carefully. You don't have to use any Herculean force here. All we're dealing with is tape. So I don't have to put the entire force of my man strength behind this. All right, we got it. Just having to coax it out. Carefully. So in each one of these, hopefully we've managed to maintain the same diameter of the hole, because the string ferrules, there's a little metal inserts have to fit into this back, the back here. Each one of these has a little collar that that the strings anchor to. When you stick the strings through the guitar and then up the neck. So you have to have something for that ball end of the string to stop up against. I know the British viewers are going to get a kick out of ball end. A bell end, right? And are we going to get it? Is it coming out? I'm going to coax this tape out of here. Okay, let's get the pliers working again. And get that little anticlimactic little tiny blob of tape instead of the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah, we're going to be digging the tape out of here, but I think we've done good work. We've at least made it more efficient than it would have been if we just yanked the head off. Boy, I'm going nuts with the double entendre, phallic double entendre here. But this is Pottymouth Guitars after all, so no surprise. Ooh, let's see if there's some jeweler's screwdrivers. Little teeny tiny blades. Take my glasses off and get that. There we go. Hopefully yeah, this is coming out. And we're kind of prying up against the surface of this clear coat top, so I'm flaring it out, but that's all right. Once again, I've poured it extra thick because I knew I was going to be removing material. And those ferrules, the collars, the metal collars that are going to be inserted into these holes are going to cover up the immediate rim. Boy, man, a rim. Okay, and at least thank goodness I can see there's definitely epoxy here in the cavity, but the opening, this larger cavity narrows down to a much smaller hole drilled through to where it opens up on the front. So I'm very pleased to see that that smaller hole isn't completely sealed. So I can at least get a drill started in that smaller channel and follow it to the front, to the top. And then I'll probably drill from the front and the rear, kind of try to meet in the middle so I don't end up making a mistake going at an angle and putting an extra hole in the surface of this guitar. That is not desirable at all. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and pry the little bit of epoxy that is in here out. Especially, it's not fully cured. I should actually be super careful about touching the surface of this thing because the surface is highly scratchable in its present state because it's a little bit soft. It hasn't completely cured, which is the perfect time to dig epoxy out of a place where you don't want it, instead of having to chip it out. It has a little elasticity left to it. Okay. I gotta remember what's going on. All right, so we've got that cleared out. Thank you for indulging me. That'll pay off in the end. All right, so as I said, this surface is... I've got fingerprints all over it. Well, that's all right. Like I said, we're going to have to sand it and buff it back anyway. And we definitely need to deal with these guys. Yeah, we'll knock that off with the... There we go. We got that knob off. Boy, man. The accidental profanity is just rampant today. Yeah, we're going to need to drill those out. It's much better than having to drill completely new holes. Because, yeah, that would have been a mess. So, success on the technical issues. We've got all our channels clear to make sure that our hardware is going to we're going to be able to install our hardware and that it's going to be effective. And we have a very good, very thick clear coat that we can zap back and get rid of all these little tiny imperfections. These just like a whole lot of little teeny tiny surface bumps. I'm just going to get that, sand those back, and then we've got a whole bunch of polishing pads and a drill bit. We're going to polish the heck out of this thing. Take another look at the front. Okay, so we've got this blob of epoxy right here. Let's see if we can... Yeah. Let's use machines to help us with that one. I'm going to dig a hole in the surface if I try to do that. And, okay, so as I was pouring the front, I did a little attempt to address a few. I had some little spots on the sides here where epoxy wasn't applied. So there's some little tiny bare spots here, all along the edges. And before I poured the back, I hit... Was it that? Yeah. I put a little epoxy right along here and started to cover a little part around here somewhere, and certainly didn't do a very good job because there's still some spots here. But at any rate, the epoxy I put on there immediately started to run and basically ran to the surface. So that is not ideal in any way, shape, or form. So because we need to protect the front. The top is, we want to be as flawless as possible. And what happened was on this, there was this spot here and this spot here, and then I realized that it was running down, so I went ahead and wiped the front, tried to wipe off the epoxy, but basically there's this dulling here where you can see I wiped off whatever epoxy was accumulating with the solvent. We might even be able to buff that back really quick. But it disrupted the surface. Yeah, I can see that it disrupted the surface. Which is fine. We poured this thick too so that we knew that we would be sanding this back at least a bit. So, at this point, we've got a covered front. The top is definitely clear coated. There's no question about it. We've got the flaws to deal with, no sweat. We expected that. Now we've got the back clear coated. We've got the channels cleared. We've taken care of that this morning. So we're good with that. We've got these little surface imperfections we'll be taken care of with the sander. Now what we need to deal with is those little imperfections on the sides. All right, so basically I'm theorizing right here and right now. I'm basically thinking that best way to do this would be to elevate the guitar. We'll go ahead and get our splash guard back here. Tennis elbow. I can't pick up the guitar like a basketball like I should be able to. I've got tennis elbow in both my elbows because I foolishly decided that I could play bass and played way too much bass in way too short of amount of time and tried to play the hardest songs in the world, of course, and gave myself tennis elbow. That was so dumb. That was my gift to myself for the pandemic because it happened right before the pandemic. So, now it's, I'm basically going to physical therapy and soon I'll be back in shape again, but I certainly learned a lesson. Get my baby blocks here. We got a cute puppy, it looks like. We got, or maybe it's a lamb. We got a little chicken. We got a mouse and a pig. We are not color conformist. We've got a teal pig and a pink mouse. So poo on you. Color conformity. All right. Much love to the gender fluid folks out there reshaping conventions here in our ever reshaping environment. This place, our life. Anyway, I'm not going to go off on a rant. So I'm going to talk about the guitar that's in front of me. So I think the best thing to do is to go top up. And we're just going to go ahead and embrace the run. Embrace the run over. So we know it's going to happen. Let's not try to mitigate it. I mean, not in any sort of recovery sort of way like I did here. Create a unique mess. It's actually pretty interesting. It's actually kind of effective what I did. But anyway, we know that there's going to be some run over onto the flat surface. So we're going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and choose the back to have that run over come over around the back because it'll be easier to correct. And we got actually because we didn't pour this with a border. I didn't border this off with tape. I wanted it to run off and cover the sides. We've got a thinner surface here, so I've got less less material to sand back. So I'm going to want that runoff to go to the thickest spot, which is the back. We'll go ahead and let the material build up back there. Whatever runs off, whatever pools and beads in the back, we'll just let that happen, knowing that we're going to go ahead and flip this thing on its front and beautify it. We're going to sand and polish and buff, and it's going to be gorgeous once we're done. So the next video, you will see me mix up a little batch of epoxy. I'm going to choose the best way to apply it. I'll probably use a palette knife. That seems to work pretty decent. No need to sacrifice a brush, because whatever brush I'd use would be gonzo. That would be the end of that brush. I'll be mixing up backs of epoxy. Mixing up a batch of epoxy. Taking probably an artist's palette knife, scooping it up and just sort of smearing it onto the exposed, little tiny exposed surfaces, because the epoxy just didn't take in certain little spots, or I didn't apply it, whatever reason. There's some little spots all the way around the guitar where there's exposed glitter. We don't want that glitter exposed. No, we want it sealed up. So we'll seal up all the edge, and then once it's dried, we've got all the beading on the back, we're going to go ahead and work the back over, make it nice and super smooth, the back and the sides. And then our coup de grace will be to surface the top and make that perfect. We're also going to be to finish the guitar off. We're waiting for a design for the headstock, for the model name of this guitar. We're going to put the model name on the headstock. And this is the Pottycaster by Pottymouth Guitars, and we're going to have a little badge, a little circular badge on the back of the headstock, another water slide that says Pottymouth Guitars, with a little logo. And I'm also having the neck plate sent off to a local local tradesman, craft person, guy with a big cool machine, a laser etcher. I'm going to have a laser etched image put into the neck plate for this guitar with Stacy Shea's name. And I'm also going to have that same guy do a laser etched top for one and maybe more guitars. I've got a paisley pattern picked out, and I'm going to have that paisley pattern applied to at least one guitar, if not more. And we're going to have some more paisley guitar action coming up on future editions of Pottymouth Guitars. I'm looking forward to that. So we'll get the neck plate with Stacy Shea and with a little paisley pattern in the corners. We've got the water slide of the Pottycaster for the front of the headstock, and Pottymouth Guitar logo on the back. We'll go ahead and apply those. We'll put a little clear coat on that the headstock, and a little. I guess we'll have to seal that. We'll have to put something to seal the logo on the back of the neck too. So we'll do that, and then we'll install the hardware. And we'll be done. Set up, get it into the good woman's hands. Looking forward to handing it off and seeing what she does with it. So, thank you so much for coming by and watching another edition of Pottymouth Guitars. You're looking at Earl Pottymouth Arbuckle. I've been your host and an experimental builder / assembler. I don't know. I'm at the assembler level of guitar builder, in my opinion. I'm refinishing and assembling guitar parts that have already been made. At some point, I've already got my very first guitar body blank and top blank, my very first one. Got a few projects to get through first, but I've got that one little holy grail project stuck in a closet waiting for when I can get to that job. I hope it's soon. But like I said, I've got some projects to get through before I get there. And the most important one is to get this guitar to Stacy Shea Williams, who hosts the show The Hash with Stacy Shea. Check that out on YouTube and Facebook. She broadcasts live weekly. She has some very interesting guests, including me. But folks much more interesting than me. Activists, actors, musicians, lots of interesting folks here in Austin, Texas. Stacy Shea knows them and wants to talk to them. Give her a listen and keep your eye peeled for this beautiful guitar when you're watching, because she may just pull it out. And then thank you so much to Make Every Media. It's the production company that's kind enough to offer to compile these videos and find a way to get them out to you. Thanks to Seth Cleveland, who's helping out with the video editing, and Ross Victor, who's helping with the video editing as well. And I always give a shout out to the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians. They're a resource here in Austin, Texas, that helps take care of Austin musicians. Health Alliance for Austin Musicians, HAM. You can find them at myham.org, myhaam.org. And they've got a sister organization. They're not the same organization, but they work together a lot because the Sims Foundation helps musicians out with mental health issues. So HAM helps with the physical health issues, and Sims Foundation helps musicians out with mental health issues and addiction, all sorts of useful and life-saving services that they offer, the both organizations. I also love to give a shout-out to the Prostate Cancer Foundation. Anyone who knows about Earl Pottymouth Arbuckle knows his relationship to prostate cancer. And thanks to the Prostate Cancer Foundation for doing the good work that they do. Holler out to y'all. And thanks all to the folks whose products I use. Nobody's selling me or sending me anything free or anything yet. Hope it happens sometime soon, and I'll let you know when it does happen. But as of now, all the things that you're going to see me put on guitars and stuff are things that I've chosen because I thought they were the best fit for the project I'm working on. And yeah, like this body, for example, Walla Walla Guitars in Walla Walla, Washington. take a look and see for that. Look for that company if you want to do a project like this with this beautiful etched Telecaster body. I think that they probably still have some of these guys in stock. They also sell fully built guitars that are stunning and I'm sure sound amazing. So Walla Walla Guitar Company provided this body. And most of the rest of it's going to be by Fender. Fender Tex-Mex pickups, Fender bridge. We're putting in a custom control plate and control rig from 920D Custom, one of my favorite companies for guitar building. They do excellent work. Their guitar rigs are outstanding. Better than anything I could ever do for sure. And they'll do any sort of custom configuration that you'd like. If you want an extra switch to turn that pickup on, whenever you want it or whatever you want. Out of phase switch, series parallel switch. Those folks, give them a holler. Talk about tell them what you want to do, and if they don't have a rig that's already designed to do exactly what you want, they'll whip you up something that will do what you want as long as it's physically possible. So anyway, that's enough hollering and blabbering from me. I'm so glad that this is turning out so well. I can't wait to give this guitar to Stacy Shea. Let's leave that on its front first. Yeah, it looks like the silicone isn't reacting very well to the surface there. Wow, yeah, that's an interesting case in point. Be careful. Uncured epoxy. Do not set it on silicone baby blocks. Yeah, even the weight of the guitar will mess with that. So, okay, we are going to wait until this top cures before we do anything. But maybe even later on today, I'll go ahead and start applying that epoxy. But boy, we're going to want to make sure that, well, that's gonna stand out like the rest of it. But anyway, that's pretty dramatic. I was just talking for like 15 minutes or so, and that baby block these baby blocks put into, yeah, that the fourth one just must not have been bearing much weight, because there are 3 distinct squares in the surface of this. All right, this stuff is still very pliable, so we'll let it do what it does, dry and cure, and we'll talk to you later. I've drawn this out as long as I could possibly draw it out, that's for sure.
Well, you're raising the dead, or shooting for the stars. Well, you can't go wrong with a Pottymouth guitar.